Welcome to the Covert Narcissism Podcast. I'm your host, Renee Swanson. I am not a therapist, and you are not a victim. Today we have a special guest. It's her first time to be here on the show, and maybe first of many, who knows. But her name is Andrea, and Andrea runs a podcast that I'm going to have to admit, the title of the podcast caught my attention right away when I saw it. It's called How Not to Suck at Divorce. And I thought, okay, I got to talk to this lady. Andrea, welcome to the show.
Hey, how are you?
It's doing good. I'm just really happy that you're willing to come on here and talk to this audience about this.
Thank you. I'm really glad. I'm so excited that we connected and that we can have these conversations together.
Absolutely. So, the How Not to Suck at Divorce, can you tell me just kind of like in a nutshell, what is this podcast all about?
This podcast is all about helping people step by step through their divorce process so they don't waste thousands of dollars, so they don't make tons of mistakes that could be irreversible, and, shed less tears, avoid heartache. It's basically helping people not make all of the mistakes that I made.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know about you, but I want people to learn from my own mistakes. And so I think that's awesome that you're doing this. So tell me this. If you're saying it is a podcast called How Not to Suck at Divorce, clearly that means something went wrong. So maybe just kind of dive into what happened in your divorce. How did it go?
Well, it started when I agreed to marry somebody I never should have agreed to marry. So let's just back up the fairy tale all the way to chapter 1, shall we?
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. Yeah.
it's so funny, Renee, and I don't know if you've experienced this, but we've both been on so many different podcasts before, and whenever we're interviewed, people are like, "Okay, well, let's go back to your marriage. It had to have been good, right? Tell us about the good days before things turned." And I don't have good days.
Oh, wow.
And that is something that I talk about a lot on the show, which is, guys, pay attention. Like if you look back on the relationship prior to getting engaged and that wasn't good, then what makes you think that your marriage is going to be any different?
Yeah, it doesn't get better from there.
No.
Right.
No.
So you were having red flags from the beginning.
I was born with a red flag stuck up my butt. I don't know what kind of language we use on this show, but like the red flags were everywhere. And I think that part of the reason, Renee, completely honest, is that I think my childhood was so red flaggy that I was primed to enter into a relationship and then subsequently a marriage that was so unhealthy because I didn't know from healthy.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
things are weird. It's like somebody punches you in the face on a first date, and you're like, "Oh, it feels like home." you
That's not a good thing.
know? Go to a therapist, not a wedding chapel, you idiot.
Yes. Yes.
And I was never physically abused, I have to say, so before people start getting really nervous, that was not part of my story, but when I would say the first mistake that I made, and I'm trying to think of the right way to phrase this, we talk a lot about death by a thousand paper cuts,
Mhm.
and I think the first thing that I started doing was the first time that I noticed that, ouch, like, that hurts. That was weird. I immediately justified the behavior.
Right.
Immediately.
Right, like so many of us do.
So
Yes.
many of us, and I know that the reason why I did that was because I was raised by a mother whom I had to do that with. So
Okay.
anytime there was an uncomfortable interaction, I was so used to justifying it, and and a lot of people think that we justify to make things better for other people in the room, and I have an unpopular opinion. I think we justify to make ourselves feel better.
I think you're 100% right. No, I'm on that bandwagon with you, that when I can justify things and make sense of things, my nervous system will settle down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because in our bodies, we have that sensation of like, that didn't feel good. Let me give you a specific example. I remember I was probably on like a second, third, fourth date with my first husband, and I remember he said something like, "I didn't have a good time." Like, just literally came out. He basically wanted to, like, post game the date, and I was getting critiqued on everything that I had done. And
Wow.
I didn't do anything for the record. For the record, you guys, I'm perfect. Um, let me start off with that. No, but for
Yeah.
the record, I didn't do anything, but it was like, I didn't have a good time last night, and I'm gonna tell you why. And it was
Wow.
all of these weird, like, you didn't make eye contact with me when you did this, and then you didn't do this, and then you opened the door when you said this, and I really was hoping that you would have closed the door then. And then and so immediately put yourself in that position. A healthier, more adjusted person would say, "Fucking bye, dude.
Yeah.
Sorry you didn't like this. I'm
Yeah.
out. Lose my number."
Right.
Immediately, Renee, I started saying, "Okay, well, yes, I'm recognizing that I feel really uncomfortable right now that somebody is critiquing me, but it's probably because open the door for all of the excuses."
Yes.
Right?
The flood of excuses.
And just like how we know in business relationships, they always tell you in business, and I know from you, like you've been in business for a long time. The way you initially establish a relationship is the way that the relationship is going to go, right? And if you initially establish a romantic relationship in a way where you're leaning back, right? And you're like, okay, you can run all over me. I'm just going to say I'm sorry and try to make it better. Well, then guess what, sister? That's what you're setting up.
Right. Right. No, that's a beautiful description of it because that's not only is that what you're setting up, it's going to get worse.
And again, it's not only what you're setting up for the other person, it's what you're telling yourself. The message that we tell ourselves is 10 times more important than a message that we will ever tell to anybody else. So you are telling yourself in that moment, "Oh, Andrea, you believe that that this treatment is congruent with what you are worthy of." Right?
Right.
This is normal. This is okay for you. This is acceptable. And so in my relationship had there was infidelity before we got married. Again, I was like, that's fine. It was my fault. You're right. I'm probably not pretty enough.
Wow.
What?
Wow.
And
Yeah.
like, you guys, I'm really pretty. Just kidding. No, like,
I
you
can
know,
vouch for that. Yes.
but no, it's just, like, crazy, like,
Yes.
when I think back of all the things that I'm like, "Okay," I'm like, it's almost embarrassing to say out loud. Like, somebody says to you, and I quote, "You're just not the kind of person whom people would be attracted to." And, like, for someone
Wow.
and from the person in my position to be like, "Yeah, I know, you're right." It's just, like but you
Wow.
get to a point where you just start accepting. And the biggest mistake that I made was not I can't even say not realizing it because it was taking it in the first place because I'll tell you and I can just feel the heads nodding of people who are listening to this episode. You all know that once that unhealthy, I wish everyone could see my fingers right now. Once everyone's in that unhealthy place of already accepting it, it's really hard to claw your way out,
It is.
right?
It is 100%. Like and this is where I've always said that the covert abuse, people say it's the worst kind of abuse. Well, it's
Yeah,
because it gets inside of you.
it eats you, and that's what
Yep.
happened to me. It started eating at me. On the exterior, nobody would have looked at my first marriage and said that marriage is abusive. My ex-husband appeared very meek, very just kinda just there,
Mhm.
not aggressive, not like no and there was, I'm also Jewish, and it's very common in the Jewish community, they talk about this all the time, and abuse is actually often ignored in our culture because it's almost never physical.
Okay.
It's usually a lot of mental, verbal, emotional, financial, all that stuff, and there's a lot of shame in the community about coming out and saying, there's something wrong in this marriage, and that was what I fell into. not only didn't want to believe it, but I I was embarrassed. I was didn't even realize how badly I was falling apart, but it got to the point where those tiny paper cuts started to make me physically sick.
Okay. And that happens because it builds up over time. I talk about it being a death by 1,000 bee stings.
Yep.
And you think about the bee stings, every one leaves a little bit of venom in you, a little bit of venom, and it builds up and it builds up and builds up.
That's exactly what happened. I fell apart physically. And it took about a year for me and a team of doctors to realize that it was this that was happening. It went from testing every single part of my body to figure out, why is this woman waking up in the middle of the night at 3 a.m. vomiting uncontrollably?
Wow.
Um, I lost about half my hair. I obviously lost a ton of weight, which, you know, kind of a bonus in some ways, but, not
Right.
the fun way to lose weight.
But not a healthy
Um,
way to do it, right.
no, but damn, I looked good. Devastated, but
Yeah.
good. Um, and I had all these rules that I came up with. Like, I turned into a shell of myself. I cut out most of my friends because I couldn't handle keeping this secret that, like,
Mhm.
I was falling apart. I made up these rules, like, I had to be home every night by 8 PM. I had to be in bed every night by 9 PM. I had to have the TV show House Hunters on TV. I had to have the covers pulled up to a certain part of my body. I wouldn't eat past 5 PM. I had all these weird rituals that I told myself I had to do in order to protect myself from falling apart. Like, it was the craziest thing.
Wow. That was probably your way to get back control in a situation in your world where you didn't have control. Your world was out of control.
Of course, and to a person who's more adjusted, they would hear this and think, "You lunatic, you think that House Hunters is gonna stop
Mhm.
you from" you are so out of control at that point. That, like, things that would typically make sense made no sense, and, like, for the record, like, I'm a fully functioning human being. I own a marketing firm. Like, I'm not a wackadoo who walks around, like, clicking her heels together 3 times and snapping like, I don't look like a
Right.
wild person on the streets who's not functioning. In public, I was a fully functioning mom of 2 person. Behind closed doors, I was a disaster. I
Wow.
was terrified. I cried every day. I didn't wanna talk to anybody about anything. Um, my background was in comedy, and I'd grown up an actor, and I did some stand-up for a while, and for a long time, I was, like, the funny girl. Well, then nothing was funny anymore after a
Right.
certain point. For a long
Right.
time, I joked about my marriage, but then it got to the point where I couldn't even do that
Wow.
because I just wasn't functioning. So things finally got really, really bad, and I had had a ton of ER visits, and then, I had one ER visit where the doctor in the ER admitted me and took my husband out of the room and said, "We need to talk to you about being safe." And I thought, "Oh my god, like, this is not my life. Like, you guys, I'm not being abused." And they started asking me questions, and then it was sort of like this underwater surreal moment where I realized, "Oh my god. Wait, this is what's happening." And it was so interesting that it took a doctor in an ER who and I went in there for I had lost consciousness 4 times in one night, hit my head on the floor, vomited uncontrollably. They had done they were checking my heart was saying something wacky, I don't even know what, and they were doing all these tests, and I guess something in that doctor told him, like, "This woman is in bad shape, there's gotta be more to the story." I don't know what else happened, I just remember it was just me and this doctor in the room, and then a female nurse who was in there taking notes, and they said, we're admitting you because we think that there's a bigger issue here."
Wow.
And that was when I got really sick in the middle of the night that night. I remember it was this Indian nurse who was helping me hold my hair back while I was vomiting in a toilet, and she said, "I'm so surprised that you're by yourself." She's like, I'm surprised that your husband isn't here with you." And I say out of nowhere, but it definitely wasn't out of nowhere. I looked at this woman and I said, "He's not gonna be my husband much longer." And as I said that, I'm like, "Oh, oh, whoa." And
This was news to you too.
yeah, "Oh, okay, this just in." And then I remember, like, crawling back to my bed, and I called my dad and I said, "Okay, this is what's going on. Like, I need to be done." It was not a surprise to anyone in my family at that point that things were bad, but I had a long plan that I was hoping to roll out over a period of like a year, and things had gotten so bad in the house that that plan kinda went out the window.
Okay. Okay, which leads me to my next question is, were you prepared for divorce?
No,
Okay.
no,
No,
because I had a
you
plan.
were in the hospital on the floor with, somebody holding your hair while you're throwing up.
Yeah, I mean, there's a famous one-woman show by, Julia Sweeney. She was the character on, SNL who had that, like, "What's that? It's Pat" character. Remember
Right.
that? Like,
Yes,
and
yes.
I believe her one-woman show was called God Said Ha, and it makes me think of, like, that famous saying, like, "We plan and God laughs." And it was
Right.
kinda like that. Like, I had this plan, but I didn't have a backup plan. I had
Okay.
a plan, but then everything changed, and then it's like, "Oh, well, shit. My plan of rolling this out over a year probably isn't gonna work anymore because this is going on." So it was like, "Let's rip off the Band-Aid. I've gotta get the F out of here." And luckily, I had the help. So there's some amazing organizations out there who help women out of situations that they need to get out of immediately. And like I mentioned before, I'm Jewish, and my kids went to a Jewish preschool. They were in preschool at the time, they were 2 and 4.
Oh, wow.
The director of the preschool called this organization on my behalf because I think there was some gossip going around the school, like what was happening to Andrea. And so this organization reached out to me and said, "We understand that you might need some help." So they helped me get out of my house one day while my husband was at work. Um, but from there, the divorce process was, I mean, on your marks, get set, go.
Yeah.
And I made a lot of mistakes because of that, because I was operating from a place of fear, of exhaustion, and straight emotion.
Mhm. We tend to think in these situations that the hard part is getting out and leaving. Okay. The hard part was getting the help and leaving in the middle of the night or leaving while they're at work. And that once we're out, okay, we're out. And now it's going to be easier from here. But that's not reality. It doesn't get easier from there.
No, it's not the hard part.
Yeah.
It's not. I wish I could say that it is, right? Because then we could just tell people, just leave and you'll be fine. It's a marathon.
Yeah.
Getting out of something that you got yourself into is a marathon. And the reason why I have the show that I have, which I am so honored that I get to have this platform, is I don't want other people to suffer the way that I suffered. And it's not even about me. I don't want other people's children to suffer
Mhm.
the way my kids suffered through a very, very messy situation. So I partnered with an attorney who's actually the head of family law at the largest firm in the United States, and together we built this show. It helps people who are in bad situations. We're helping you see through the eye of the storm. So even if things are that bad, here are some actionable things that you can do so you don't fuck shit up.
Right.
Because you want to. Like, it's almost impossible to make good decisions when you're exhausted and scared.
It
So guess
is,
what?
and
You don't make decisions then. Like, spoiler alert.
right, right. You can't make the decisions when you're a puddle on the floor and can't stand up,
No.
or when you've had no sleep for days and days and days on end, and you can't even form a complete sentence, and you're trying to make major life decisions.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay. Well, Andrea, thank you so much for being on this show. We're going to wrap it up here, but as we do, and I hope that you will come back and speak more to this audience, would love to have you again. But as we do, is there any word of hope that you want to leave with this audience on people out there who are looking at this going, divorce is just too scary? I can't possibly consider that. What would you say to them?
You're wrong. You can consider it. You should consider it. Your life will never get better unless you get brave. I can tell you very quickly 5 years out, your life will be completely different. My life looks nothing like it did several years ago. I am now happily remarried. I have a totally different life because of the choices that I made to get there. It was a lot harder for me because I had to undo a lot of stuff that I did, but if you take the steps, listen to our podcast, we even have a crash course available that it
Mhm.
will hold your hand. Listen to this podcast, get help, it will get better.
I love that, and thank you so much for saying that because there are ways to move forward, and I'm 6 years out, and I can vouch for that too. My life looks totally different than what it was for all of those years that I was in such a nightmare situation.
Yep. Yep,
All right.
you got it, but you have to get brave, right? It all starts with getting brave and being done and stop that message that you tell yourself.
Yes. Yes. So, Andrea, thank you so much. I look forward to many more of this. And we're going to do, in fact, a little bit of an episode swap here where now I'm going to jump on and be the guest on her show. I'm thrilled about that and excited about that.
It's gonna be good. We're gonna help so many people. Watch us
Awesome.
go.
Let's do it. Yes. Awesome. So, Andrea, thank you so much. And everyone out there listening, I wish you so much peace on your journey of healing. You have been listening to the Covert Narcissism Podcast, where we break apart the insidious nature of these incredibly destructive and frustrating to the ends of the earth individuals. If you are struggling with the isolation, overwhelming self doubt, and obsessive ruminating, you are not alone. I offer live, personalized coaching that is specific for you. This coaching can be individual or group sessions, or a combination of the two. You can find all the information at covertnarcissism.com. Reach out anytime. My email address is Renee, Renee, at covertnarcissism.com. And remember, I am not a therapist and you are not a victim, but I am a coach and you are a survivor. The information provided by Renee Swanson, Covert Narcissism Podcast, and CNG Life Coaching is for educational purposes only and is not to be used for diagnosis purposes. It is not intended to be a substitute for clinical care. Please consult a health care provider for guidance specific to your case. This material discusses narcissism in general. Renee shares stories from her personal experience as well as from those she has talked with for several years. Her material does not claim that any specific person has narcissism and should not be used to refer to any specific person as having narcissism. Permission is not granted to link to or repost this material to support any allegation or claim that any specific person is a narcissist. That would be an unauthorized misuse of the material and information provided.